This is Your Town. I'm Ann Leffel, host for this show with the Monterey County Business Council. So we're learning all about our community and what's going on, what's important, and we've got a really important topic for this segment. We've got two important topics, and my guest is Dr. Bettye Saxon, regional manager of External Affairs, AT&T.
That's correct.
It's a mouthful.
I know, I have to say it.
So one of the things that was enacted this last year, and I think it was like $45 billion, was AT&T got a contract for the safety net across the nation.
Yes.
And it's called FirstNet, is that correct?
That's exactly correct.
So, and the state of California adopted that.
Yes, they did opt in.
And so
in the last hour.
Well, that's okay. We're not going to.
True to Governor Brown.
So I think it's really important for our area with all the different segments that we have that are all in the world of safety for citizens, and also with the rural areas, that is extremely important. So you want to talk about FirstNet a little bit and how it impacts the Monterey region and Monterey County?
Sure. Well, I always like to give people the origins of why FirstNet came into being. And when we had 9/11, that tragic day, all the first responders, whether it was from the police department, the fire department, the helicopters, what they realized with this committee that had to debrief is that all of these responders were on different systems and they couldn't talk to each other. And nobody predicted that we would have a major catastrophe like that on our homeland, but it happened. So in the debriefing about what happened in 9/11, this was one of the themes that emerged. And there was a committee that was comprised of, it was senators, House representatives from your major first responders around the country. And they said that what we need is a network that we can all talk on and we'll all be able to communicate with each other if this ever happens again. You hope that it doesn't, but there can always be a disaster, whether it's a natural disaster, which we experienced, of course, this summer with the fires and then later the mudslides. I mean, I think we've probably experienced more disasters maybe than any other state. So we were competitive. It was a RFP that was put out, and we were awarded the contract early part this year.
Last year.
Yes, of 2017.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Our job inside of the AT&T was that we had to get the states to opt in. A state could actually choose not to go on this network, but if they chose not to go on the network, they had to put out their own RFP. They had to pay for it with taxpayers' dollars from the state, and it had to match the specs of the network that we were charged to design. So you either opt in, which we pick up the tab between that and the funding that was set aside by the federal government, or you're going to put some onerous taxes on bills it just wasn't going to work. Anyway, bottom line is all 50 states opted in.
Terrific.
So now it's time for us to build out that network. So there was this illusion that most people thought, well, this is going to be its own separate private network. False. It's taking an existing infrastructure, and that was one of the reasons why we won the bid, and then building out on that infrastructure to provide additional service in areas, rural areas, that had no coverage. So we have to build. We have to continue to build out the network, which that's a good thing for consumers. So consumers in a non-disastrous state can enjoy this larger network. What happens with the first responders, in the case of an emergency, we will prioritize their traffic. That doesn't mean we block anybody else's traffic. I want to make that perfectly clear. We don't block. But we will prioritize to the first responders that they need this network, and it's real time. We will know through our network monitoring, we know when a disaster has hit. And the first responders are your police, your firefighters, your emergency vehicles.
Ambulances.
Yes, yes. So it's a tiered kind of approach. So they're number one. They're in that first tier. The second tier is that support group that comes in, the Red Cross, any of your local Salvation Armies, or any of these that want to apply and say, we want to be a part of this first net. So you can choose not to be a part of the first net, but it's probably not a good idea if your main position out here, especially Monterey County Office of Emergency Services, they will want to participate. So is there a cost? Yes, there is a cost. But the building of the network, we do. The local cities and the municipalities for their own first responders will have to sometimes change out equipment because their current equipment does not match or work the specs of what the new network is. And we're going to make sure that everything is cost effective because we want them on that network. We want this to work. So we have a whole new team that's been hired. That's going to be actually going to the different police departments and doing presentations. I understand external affairs is going to get involved in some of these so that we can educate them on what they need, why they need it, and give them the tiers of cost structure.
So let me ask you, so a state like California, which is so big,
Yes.
which becomes then a high-cost state just because of the sheer size of it, and also because of some of the remote areas. We've had a problem every time we've had fires in our mountainous areas that they don't have good connectivity.
That's correct.
I saw there was a pretty big earthquake last night centered near Watsonville. And I didn't feel it at all.
Was it last night?
Last night they had one, and it shook all the way up into the Bay Area, into Millbrae. I guess it's whatever.
I guess I slept through it.
Well,
I knew about Anchorage.
Yeah, no. This was last night, and people really got a good jolt. They said.
Yeah.
I didn't feel a thing, but then we're on granite here in Monterey, so a lot of times we don't feel it. But I guess the question is, will California be one of the first where the build-out starts?
Yes.
Or because I've seen so much of this, and it's not about the company, but it's about they start in, I'll pick a state, Iowa or Nebraska, just because it's simple, it's flat, and there's not much hills, and they can kind of zip across it. But then by the time they get to a state like California, it slows down so much that then sometimes technology even changes. And I'm like, oh, please, can we start here and get it done? Because I think there's such a need.
Yeah, there is a timeline that we also must follow.
So it's part of the RFP?
Yes.
Okay.
So let's say Iowa opted in back in August. Within 30 days, we had to start building up. Okay. So as I mentioned in the last hour, our governor did opt in. So within 30 days, we actually have to start building out.
Okay, good.
So it's already begun as we speak.
Well, and to bring it down to a personal level, because at the end of the day, it is all about me.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
I mean, that's how us citizens
I get
are.
that. Yeah.
But I remember in 1987, I believe it was, when the Pebble Beach fire broke out and several homes were lost. That was the biggest problem, was because when they brought in fire departments and police from different jurisdictions, they could not talk to each other. So, for instance, if Marina responded to Monterey, they were not on the same frequency. Or the CHP wasn't on the same frequency. And so there was a lot of controversy, even as back as 1987, that there were too many networks. So the county worked hard to build up a system, and I did not remember what it was called. But I know that, for instance, I'm an elected official on the airport board. We reluctantly opted in, and it was fairly costly to move all of our equipment over, to buy new equipment, to do everything. So, you know, I'm hoping that this one can be done seamlessly and with as little pain as possible. I get that everybody's, it's kind of like an elementary school where all the curriculum is chosen by the teachers there, and then they get to the middle school and you've got 5 different elementary schools that all read a different history book slightly, and then they get to high school and it's even more so. I understand that because it is all about what products you choose and what you do, but I do hope that we can come together as a region here and really work in a way that's collaborative, because otherwise the citizens lose.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. And the Monterey Regional Fire Department wrote a letter of support. And they've already asked for a presentation because the chief said, we're about to buy new equipment. I don't want to buy equipment that's not going to work.
Exactly.
So he held up the process of buying equipment the way they normally buy, in the communications equipment anyway, so that they will know exactly what the specifications are for the new radios. And here's what's going to happen with this new network. Your own device, sometimes you won't even have to trade out the device itself. Let's say you have a smartphone. Well, it will be software driven. And so you can actually connect via the software so that you're not operating on a different frequency, and then they can communicate with each other. They'll be able to send videos to each other so that they can show, okay, here's this area. Here is where we need more people. And then that particular fireman can videotape, send that back. Then the operations center will say, okay, we need 15 people. So it's really amazing. This is a first. There's no such thing as a first. That does not probably have its challenges. But we're going to try to make this as seamless as possible for the residents. Well, at least all of the municipalities as they opt in.
Terrific.
So we won't be doing everybody at one time. California is too big for that. So we're going to focus in on areas that we can, and especially areas that we know really need the additional support first.
Terrific. Okay, so let's talk. We're going to run out of time. I want to talk about small cell sites.
Small cell sites.
I live in the Monterey Vista neighborhood, which has become kind of like ground zero for small cell sites. But as I understand it, these sites are put on existing poles, or if there's an aging pole, the pole is replaced, and then a box of, 18 inches by 2 feet is put on the pole.
That's correct.
And it allows for a boost in service in that region. Is that a good?
That's very good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to learn. I don't want to just go by somebody said blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So it's important, I think. I mean, as economic developers and as parents and grandparents who have children who are increasingly using electronic devices to learn and to research and to do their homework and to further themselves, it's so important. I see more and more people who are buying homes, who are running in-home businesses.
Yes.
And they're doing it with either computers and, in a lot of cases, cell phones where they're calling. And I think people just have to have an open mind on this. This is not that someone's putting up a
massive
1,000-foot tower in your driveway, but instead they are enhancing your service with a small cell site on an existing pole.
That is correct.
Okay.
One of the points that you brought out earlier is that as we evolve, the technology evolves. So to put up a tower, the life cycle was about 2.5 to 3 years just to get one in. And of course, everybody on their smartphones were like, where's my tower? I need a tower. But our municipalities were saying, hey, too many towers. We can only, because they control time, place, and manner, okay? So we, as a company, Ericsson, who really is the aspect of the ones who build the towers themselves.
They're a contractor.
Yes, they're a contractor, and they are the creators of the technology that makes it work.
Okay.
That's what I'm looking for. They constantly innovate. And they were saying that, okay, well, you notice how you can have a better, one part of your home, you would have a okay signal, but then if you went in the other part, in another room, you had no signal? Well, because the towers could only do so much, and we have to keep it within the limits of what the FCC says. So these small cells were designed to penetrate more into the neighborhoods for the exact reason that you were saying, is that people are using their wireless devices and they want a signal no matter what room they're in.
I don't want to have to stand outside and go up the hill to be able to call my kids.
That's exactly correct. So they're less intrusive. They're more cost effective. They have a space difference. So they're not going on every pole. So they are strategically placed throughout a neighborhood so that you kind of blanket that area with seamless wireless coverage. So the whole argument that often communities have is that they have this fear that the technology is, or the waves, we should say, is giving them cancer. And there's no evidence to substantiate that. So on one hand, you will find that all of the ones that come out and they want to complain about the and they say don't put it in, they have they actually have wireless phones in their purses. Okay. One of the RF engineers came out, and that's radio frequency engineers, came out and testified against this one unit that we know very well on Monterey, and he demonstrated to them that the microwave oven that you use in your home emits more radiation than what these devices do.
Well, Betty, I think you and I will probably have this discussion ongoing because it's going to be, I think it's going to be big for our neighborhoods. As a member of the Central Coast Broadband Consortium, I find it almost ridiculous that we have fought so hard to put more broadband in unserved and underserved areas. And meanwhile, our level of service within our municipalities is still pitiful.
Yeah.
And so I just think people have to understand that. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. This was a pleasure.
You know, I'm a fan of AT&T. I think when I got my first cell phone, I was AT&T, and I've never switched. So
thank you.
I believe that AT&T does a good job for this region. So thank you.
Perfect.
So.
We'll see you at the Pro-Am.
Yes, you will. So don't go away. Oh, do go away. I'll see you next month. Enjoy this month, and we'll be back next month to learn more about your town. Thank you.